video, I'm going to show you how to make what's called a snake book. This kind of book is another one-page book design. So another potential method for using a single print on a page and later dividing it into a smaller book. And so this one's a little bit more complex than the X book, which I think had front and back cover and like 6 pages on the inside. This one gives you a front and back cover, and I think there's 12 pages total. And with this type, you can work on just one side of the booklet on the inside, or you can also, depending on how if you want to create covers for it or not, you can kind of work along both sides of the page as well. So there's some flexibility, and it takes a little bit more planning because it travels in such a way where you have to really pay attention to which way the paper rotates when you are planning your design. This is a sample from a long time ago that I made in a bookbinding class. And it was a little storybook about a trip to a water park. And so going through it, I used very flimsy paper, like I think just computer paper, just to experiment. And so it was, you can kind of see it travels along. And then it finishes, and I flip it back the other way. And there's even some points in which it kind of starts to split open. So there's some anomalies in the design, but if you know how to design for it in advance, it's kind of fun to work with. Like just because there's certain folds that happen, and so you can read it like a book, but there's also opportunities where typical way a page folds over is disrupted. And so you can, when you learn about what those look like, you can plan for those. So tools you will need for this X book, you might need a ruler, unless you're really good at eyeballing thirds. So I'm going to use a 8.5 by 11 sheet, but some people prefer to work with a 7.5 piece of paper because that'll be easier to divide by 3 to get 2.5. So it's a little easier to get accurately with a 7.5 inch wide paper. 7.5 by 10 will get you a nice even square. So keep that in mind. So materials you'll need, 7.5 inch by 10 inch paper is recommended because it'll easily divide by 3 and make a square. I will, in my video, just use 8.5 by 11 sheet. I'm just gonna eyeball it. And you'll need a ruler, your bone folder, or other creasing tools, such as a popsicle stick or wooden stick, or like some kind of plastic palette knife. Sometimes I use like a pencil or even back of my scissors and a pinch. Just beware of any metal tools to, put something like a piece of paper down as you crease it, so you don't get a metal line. Oh, and you will need either scissors again, or an X-Acto knife or other kind of retractable blade for cutting a couple pieces. Okay. So first thing is you want to start with a piece of paper vertically, and you will fold it in half, top to bottom, and take your bone folder or other scoring tool. Make sure your corners are matched up, and I start from the center and work my way out. And just crease that. And now you want to open it back up like a book. Flip it over so it's more like a mountain. And you'll take one side, fold it to the center, the peak of the mountain. Make sure that lines up. Take your bone folder, center out,
And do that again with the other side. Center, match this up to the center. So it almost looks like a little, either you can kind of open it up this way, or, you know, it's like a little accordion fold. Now we're going to open it back up. And now we want to fold it in thirds. Now, I did not make this easy to divide, so it's for 8.5 by 11, divide that by 3, it's about 2.8-ish. And so I just kind of fold it one side to about the 2 3/4 mark-ish, and it works fine. So I'm going to kind of use my cutting mat as my guide. So I'm going to take one corner, and I'm going to kind of subtract 1, 2.5, 2 75, or 2 3/4, 2 3/4, I guess. Here we go. And I will, of course you can smudge it a little bit to get it closer to 2.8. It's not perfect. Alright, so that looks nice, that's straight. And now I'm going to take the other side and fold it to the crease mark that I just did. Alright, so I should have subdivided my paper into about 12 different panels in a way. And next we're going to make 2 cuts. The first cut we're going to make is going to be from this top 4 on the left, that center dot, all the way down to the bottom. So you can either use scissors, I'll use scissors for this first one, and so I'm going to cut from here all the way down. Sorry, I have a bunch of shadows. Try to be nice and careful. And something I try to do is I try not to cut all the way to the tip of the scissors, because sometimes it tears just slightly if you go close the scissors completely. So usually I'll just keep inching, but I'll try not to clamp down entirely, because that last clamp will tear it just so. Alright, so this makes 3 of these open. And now I'm going to go to this side, and instead of starting from the bottom up, you're going to go from the very top to here. Or, since it might be easier for me, I'm going to rotate it towards myself. So basically you're making a giant N shape. The letter N. Okay, so this time I'm going to use my retractable blade and my ruler. So I'm going to line up my ruler along the crease. Set that against my ruler. So I press the blade up against the ruler and let the ruler guide my tool. So here we have a giant, it's almost like the letter N. And so now what you'll do is, starting with any corner, begin to do mountain and valley folds. So you want to alternate between mountains, valleys. Now, if you had done this earlier, sometimes the only places you might need to change might be at these points, because you don't really want to fold it in and trap it. You want to keep it going so it's like a natural peaks and valleys. So it might take a couple tries to get it in the right direction, but just keep alternating peak, valley. So sometimes you have to change what you have your crease at when you switch sides. And there you have it. You have a little X booklet with all sorts of pages. So like the X book, I recommend writing down the order of your book in terms of numbering it, so that if you want to design a print or a single sheet design and cut down later, that you make sure that you have the elements you need and the spots you need for when you cut it down to a book size. So I will begin by writing, you know, cover and numbering the pages in the bottom right hand corner. And so this will tell you like the direction it is facing or rotating as it goes. And some of them I think aren't entirely straight. So once I unfold it again and kind of get it back into a single sheet, what's interesting is you'll see that your front and back cover are actually on the back side. And so, okay, so there's 12 pages on the inside. And this is why it's good to do mock-ups before you do your whole design. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Flip that over. So it rotates a couple different times, so it's good to see where you have to think about reflecting any designs. So good, I'll always do a mock-up if you're doing a book, I would say, especially if you're doing a printed image. So I think this is another fun format to experiment with, and so I encourage you to even just try out making one of these with a piece of paper just to see what it looks like. So there you have it, a tiny X book.